Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, English teacher. An honor to meet you in this video. Thank you for coming to this presentation. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Natasha Irawan, and my members there are Nurul Ihsani, Radrina Andri, and Riana Pratiwi. We are from English department students, Faculty of Language and Arts at Universitas Negeri Medan. In this chance, we would like to share about using poetry musicalization to teach English. So keep watching.
Poetry musicalizations is a great tool to use in order to teach English to our students. In this course, we will examine why do we teach poetry musicalizations, why do we do instructions when we are teaching the poetry musicalizations, factors that teachers should know before teaching poetry musicalizations, and the student also learn what the poetry musicalization is, and the types and the characteristic of poetry musicalizations, and also the example, practice, and exercise of poetry musicalizations, especially in listening and speaking.
Then I will explain about why do your student learn the poetry musicalization. The first is increase their speaking, listening, writing, and reading. The second, help your student to express themselves. And the third is encourage their creative thinking. And the last is speeding up your student comprehension. And I will explain why do your student do the instruction when they are learning the poetry musicalization. The first reason is can identify the poetry musicalization and improve your student knowledge about this material. And the second is enable them to dig into their creativity and talent in writing, speaking, listening, and reading, and also performing their poetry musicalization. And the third is your student can analyze the poetry musicalization like definition, purpose, language feature, tone structure, and also message of the poetry musicalization. The next reason is the instructor are make your student comprehend the message and the meaning of the poetry musicalization clearly and stronger, and also express their feeling. And the last reason is at the same time speeding up their comprehend of English poetry, particularly from the aspect of musical device of a poetry.
Okay, I will continue the explanation about warming up. The teacher should give a warming up to the student. It can be asking questions, games, quiz, and so on. So in this part, as a teacher, you have to ask your student to answer this question in the beginning of the lesson to make them more active, comfortable, enthusiastic, and ready to achieve the learning process.
Before you're teaching this material, you should know about the factor of poetry musicalization. And the first one is social function, language feature, generic structure, and the message of the poetry musicalization. For the explanation of the material, you should convey the basic information of the poetry musicalization and other aspects that the student should know about that. The first is the definition of poetry, musicalization, and poetry musicalization. And the second is the types of poetry. And the last is the characteristic of poetry musicalization. For the explanation of this material, the basic information, you should provide an adapt explanation of the material being touched by giving the instruction to your student to find as much information as possible about the poetry musicalization. After you teaching the explanation of the material, you can give the example of poetry. The example of poetry musicalization is important. Can give your student the example about this material. It can be used to make sure your student to more understand about the material, and with that they are easier to answer and perform assigned tasks and also provide this material well.
Okay, I will continue the next explanation. It's about listening section. Listening is openly taking in the words of another way. Poetry connection with the musical way of hearing language. Maybe it's basic in the identifying use and distinction of an art form. As the teacher in the listening session, you have to ask your students to watch and listen this video from YouTube. The video entitled Dream about Poetry Musicalization. After you ask your students to watch and listen to the video, ask them to do 3 practices. The first practice is about identifying the social function, language features, and messages of video entitled Dream About Poetry Musicalization, and ask them to do in groups. Second practice, it's about fill the blank of the text. Here is the text, and ask them to do individually. The third practice, there is a table like this, and ask them to do individually. All materials and practices aim to improve your students' knowledge about poetry musicalization and train your students' listening skills and comprehending about poetry musicalization.
I will continue. The next explanations is about speaking sections. The sections aims to develop your students' communication skills and develop your students' understanding of poetry musicalizations. There are 2 practices in these sections. Practice 1, you should instruct your students to read the poetry carefully. By reading, students can develop flexibility and fluency in speaking, and students can increase their understanding of what they have read. Practice 2, pronunciation practice. You must pronounce the words and let your students repeat after you. You can pronounce it one by one. The purpose of this practice is students are able to pronounce words quite accurately and correctly. The next is exercise. There are 2 exercises in the sections. Exercise 1, your student must read the poem and tell to the class the meaning of the poem. This practice is used to your students because to train and hone the skills of your students. Exercise 2, your students are asked to choose the correct answer from multiple choice. These multiple choice test questions are used to measure learning outcomes that are more complex and pertain to aspect or your students' memory.
Okay, I will continue the explanation about reflection. In this reflection, you will reflect on what your students have learned. So as teacher, you will lead your student to reflect on what your students are learning now. You can ask your student to answer this question and then handwrite your student answer on the paper. At the end of the learning process, ask them to do 3 practices. The first practice is about identifying the social function, generic structure, language feature of poetry from the text. The second practice is about make poetry in group according to the themes, family, friends, and love. Just choose one. The third practice, as a teacher, you have to ask your student to present the draft and present the poetry musicalization in group. It is very useful to make your student more confident to show their talent and be brave to show up their skill. The last is references. There are some references for the material and you can see the sources of them.
Okay, that's all about the material for poetry musicalization. Thank you for watching this video and we hope this video can help you to teach your student. See you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.